I just want to take a minute and thank everybody for all the support, for listening, financially contributing to me in 2024. 2025 is going to be a great year. But I also want to take 1 second and let people know that I am self supported. If interested in financially contributing to what I'm doing, I have a Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, monthly subscriptions through Local, Patreon. I also have Zelle, and I have a P.O. Box. All of the information is in every single episode of my show notes, and can't wait for 2020, more of 2025, and more conversations ahead. Thank you. Yeah, here we are, February 27th, and so this episode will come out tomorrow. It'll be the last day of February. And where do you think things sit right now with us as a country? I know we're gonna. Well, we'll start broader.
Questions.
We'll start broader, and then we'll work our way in. All right. So, what's concerning you most right now?
Two related things. One, a lot of really good things are happening. A lot of things way beyond what people could have imagined. Even myself, these were in my greatest hopes. I thought some of these things would happen, and there's so much that's happening behind the scenes. I think your guest yesterday, Quinones, I
Yeah,
don't know
Pete.
how to
Yeah, Pete Canonis.
yeah. I think he mentioned yesterday that there's so much things happening behind the scenes that nobody's seeing. And one of the things that's happening, not to segue, but related, is people really need to look at the amount of lawfare that's going on right now. It's gone in, it's all these lawsuits against what Trump's doing, what the administration's doing, what the cabinet picks are doing, et cetera, has unleashed unreal amount of legal action, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases, judges stepping in, ruling from the bench, um, uh, basically judges saying that they're the president through their rulings, et cetera, abusing the executive branch, et cetera. There is immediate counter, very sophisticated, very intelligent counters immediately from the DOJ, immediately from the AG's offices. There's now even stuff happening at state levels in a few states. The amount, and there's a guy, I can't remember his name. I posted on my YouTube earlier. There's a guy who does this running dialogue numerous times a day of all this stuff, and he's hilarious. I mean, how he's reading out this stuff and making it presentable to us that don't have a legal degree, it's hilarious. And but point being is that I'm immensely grateful and relieved to see all the extraordinary stuff that's happening that we can see and that we don't see, accepting people that, have some background in legal and finance, because there's lots of stuff happening in the banking and finance stuff as well. What I'm concerned with is that we still don't recognize who the enemy really is and how they really function and operate. Tom was on, your guest, Tom Luongo, and he and I have messaged a couple times through the X. Tom said something the other day on another show that I caught part of with you and Alex, that, what comes next is violence. And he's right. He's right. And to be honest, I'm happy to hear him say it and to recognize it. The issue is that everybody still keeps looking at the communists, the Marxists, the Marxists, the Marxists. But that's not who's behind all of this. That's not who the Praetorians are. That's not how this system and regime was washed, repeated in bloodshed and genocide in the 20th century. That was the Nazis using the Marxists and the communists as useful idiots to cause a immune-like reaction in the populace that justified genocide, ethno-nationalism, and the purging of undesirables, or the looking the other way as that happened, right? So My real concern is that we're not recognizing who the real enemy is. And because of that, we don't actually, while we know something's coming and we have some loose idea, if you don't know your enemy, you don't know how they're going to actually operate. And you, more importantly, don't understand what their end state is so that you can prevent it. So my genuine concern right now is that I'm not hearing anybody. Now, James Lindsay touches on it here and there, and he's a bit out there now. And I know James. We're not colleagues or anything, but he and I message and communicate every once in a while.
He turned into like a provocateur, didn't he? A little bit. I don't remember him being that
Yeah,
way.
he said something to me. I messaged him about something I was seeing, right? That would impact, his dialogue and his conversations he's having. He came back with something that just was like, "Are you effing kidding me?" So, and I respect the hard work he does and what he's doing, and I respect. You mentioned Peter Zayan earlier, right before we came on, and others. And I'm listening to other guys, Colonel this and so this and so this and this, and it's like, okay, you guys were actually right in the prognostication of what was going on and who was behind it to this point, right? To in these ways. That's being addressed now. Now that's happening. That's not the enemy anymore. That's not the operations anymore. That's right. Now you're not and I think you and I and Murray actually said this. We did in our talk, right? It is a very hard thing for somebody when they realize that their expertise helped bring about a thing, but now that thing's occurred and the picture's changed dramatically, that they're now no longer the big voice. They shouldn't try to be the big voice in the room, because now what they're doing is getting in the way of the other voices in the room that actually understand what's happening now. What the, it's like a medical doctor with somebody who's got multiple serious issues. You bring in the experts to help you figure out a major issue, you solve that, and what does it do? It unmasks other major issues that they're not the best doctor for, because it deals with other systems in the body. And so, those two things are tied up in my concerns right now. So a lot of great things are happening, and they're setting the conditions for a truly solid future on the other side of a bit of a fight, or a lot of a fight. But what concerns me is that we still keep talking about Marxists and communists, and that's never actually really been our enemy. That was the enemy we had to face at the time, right? We had to deal with that problem. But now, kind of like a video game, right? Now we have the possibility to get the big final boss. The big final boss isn't communism and Marxism. They've always been useful idiots.
So, what is the final boss?
Nazis.
And who, in your mind, are these people?
The West, Europeans, continental Europeans, who've been occupying, to Tom's stuff, right? Tom's very right about the power and control that's been coming out of the city of London increasingly for the last 350 years. But the United Kingdom and the British peoples, the British Empire, has been occupied by Germans since 1688. Industrialists, bankers, parliamentarians welcomed in and brought in to parasitize on the English and British peoples. And English, there's no ethnic English, right? That's civilizational peoples, a mixing of Danes and Frisians and Jutes and Angles and Saxons and Britons and Celts and Gaels and Picts and, all the peoples that lived in the British Isles at the time, right? So we call them Nazis now because that's the easy label, right? Because they called themselves that in the last century. But these are parasites. They devoured Germany and destroyed Germany. They were already basically in control of the United Kingdom and the British Empire. They've used up and consumed it completely to where there's nothing left. Just like a parasite, they've killed that host, the British Empire, as a host. And over the last 40 years, they've been steadily infecting America and all that is the United States at every level, everywhere. And now they're looking to finally kill off the United Kingdom, bankrupt Europe.
Are they close to that,
And
EM? Not to cut you off. Are they close to that?
yeah, short of civil war, the United Kingdom is done. Done. Short of a bloody civil war where they restore the individual sovereignty of native-born British, ethnically, peoples native to the islands, and some others, right? Not to take, so the thing about a civilization is that it's not an ethnic thing. That's a kingdom. Civilizations take into account, by their very nature, take into account a whole number of ethnic groups. Like Russia is a civilization, the Russian civilization. Russia is 140 different ethnic groups, 140 plus, 30 or 40 different linguistic groups. China is, I don't remember what it is, 1,400 or 1,100 ethnic groups, and 11 or 14. It's one of those, I don't remember which, but it's over 1,000 ethnic groups and over 1,000 linguistic groups, right? The English are the same. We're a civilizational people around English as our language, but we've 10, 15 different ethnic groups. And if you add in the colonies, the colonial peoples were 15, 20 different ethnic groups, maybe 30. So it's not a race thing when I say that we're English and we have to get back, short of getting back to English peoples. The United Kingdom's done. It's devoured. There's nothing left. I mean, there is nothing left to devour. The empire's gone.
They couldn't fight there. Could you even envision the people rising up there at this point?
Yeah, so we have to so we've been occupied in the United Kingdom since 1688, when our own bankers, industrialists, parliamentarians, and some of the nobles, who were jealous of the power structure, wanted to change it, invited a continental prince, William of Orange, and a traitorous Stuart wife, King James II's daughter, to depose the English king and be set up as a puppet monarch. We've been occupied since 1688. Well, that all began in the conflicts that Elizabeth I was fighting against the Catholics and the continental powers trying to dominate and come to control. And, in the United Kingdom, that was all set there. The tearing down of King Charles I, who was the last king who actually fought for the English people. So he had to be torn down, and he had to be, the whole history of him and the interpretation of him had to be skewed to what it is today. The point being is that for 400 years, the English civilization is a thing that's been denied. We've been called European civilization and Western civilization. The English are not Europeans. We are not Westerners. We fought those sons of bitches for 1,000 years. But everything about us has been denied us. Primarily at the heart of our civilization that Alfred the Great set about and finally came to be under his grandson Athelstan, and even survived all since up until the late 1600s, including the invasion of the Normans, who were actually Scandinavian Normans. They were not French, they were Scandinavians. And so they had far more in common with the English civilization than they did French civilization. They were just the muscle for the, north and northeastern borders of France. We survived that too, and the Normans became more English than the English. kind of like every invasion that happened in China, where every invader became more Chinese than the previous dynasty. Well, we finally failed in the 1600s. The point is that we are not, to your question, yes, the United Kingdom, the English-speaking peoples can survive this. Now, the United States has got to clean up its mess and survive because it is the dominant force in the English-speaking world now, and will be if it survives. But in order for this to happen, including the survival of the United States, we have got to reconnect with English civilization. We have to recognize that the English are a unique civilization, a distinct civilization, that we are not Europeans. We have been morally and otherwise mortally opposed to Europe's control structures. So at the core of English civilization is individual sovereignty, the right to private property, and the balance of power between prince, people, and the priest, which is, the bureaucracy, the government, etc. That's fundamental to the English civilization. It's diametrically opposed to Europe. Europe's been European control systems and structures, even under the Catholics, particularly under the Catholics, which is the only real civilization of Europe, is total and absolute control, subjugation, control, no right to property rights, no individual sovereignty, no balance of power between people, princes, and priests. It's totalitarian control. Well, the English civilization is mortally set against that, and we fought that out for over 1,000 years. We're still fighting that out. So if we can reconnect with that, throw off the yoke of our European oppressors who have so corrupted the top, and now at every level in Europe, in British government and the Five Eyes, of which the U.S., we're trying to do that now in the U.S., throw all that off. If we can do that and reconnect with ourselves as a civilizational people and restore to ourselves the principles and the history and, as Roger Scruton said, the beauty of our peoples and our civilization and things that we've done in the world as a distinct people, then yes. If we can't do that, then no, because in order to stand and fight, it's one thing to have somebody charging at you with a knife or a gun and you do the appropriate action, violent action. It's another thing when somebody's coming at you, twisting and contorting reality, denying you any sense of trying to deny you any sense of yourself. How do you know when to shoot them in the face? Right? That's how these resentfuls work. They're trying to kill you, just the same as the guy charging you with a knife or a gun. But how they're doing it is they're getting in close, they're getting in your head, they're getting inside the perceptions of you so that they can get in close enough to slit your throat before you can do anything. When in reality, you need to shoot them in the face before they get even close to you. If the shared community doesn't remember themselves as a shared, as a civilizational people and as a community, they're going to be allowed to get close to you and slit your throat, because if you shoot them before they get, shoot them in the face before they get close to you, the community is going to turn on you.
See, this is where and I've been talking about this, some other conversations, and it was from a personal friend of mine. We were chatting, and, he brought up the point of, it feels like there's a civil war going on the elite level. And I've used the reference, the WEF 2.0, to where, and this is just my own theory, so, and I'm wrong about everything, so take it for whatever this is worth.
Probably not true.
No, I tell people, don't one listen to me as you right now, EM. So, what do I know? But, I was wrong about the election. I never thought the administration would be moving at the speed that it is right now. The Maha movement, though, I think I'm going to prove to be right about. I think because big pharma is not going away,
They'll evolve. Parasites evolve.
of course. But and I love how they're focusing. Not to I'm sidetracking Maha for a second, but I love how they're focusing on food. Like you really need somebody to tell you the Skittles are bad for you. I just saw because it's the red dye in the Skittles. That was one of the things. And then Kellogg's cereal. Like, do you need somebody to tell you that cereal is bad for you?
Okay, so when they went hard after big tobacco bought into food and pharma. You can look it up.
Yeah, I knew that. So they just
Philip
pivoted.
Morris they didn't go away. Tobacco companies didn't go away. They didn't change their business practices. Okay, well, you got us on tobacco. So we'll go buy up the food companies, and they own, I don't remember what it is, 4 or 5 companies own 90% of all food distributed in the world or in the country, and Europe, most of Europe, and the pharmaceutical companies. Same companies. I mean, people just go look up 10Ks and 10Qs and right. And other people have done the work where they've worked out all the ownership, et cetera. What did tobacco do? They're like, okay, well, you got us there. So we'll go buy up all the food and we'll do the same practices, put all the shit in the food. And then we'll go buy pharma because then you're going to be so unhealthy. So I say it this way. You know why they call it pharma? Because they're farming all the cells in your body for the productivity of those cells. Make the cells sick, hundreds of trillions of cells in a single individual. Make them sick. And then sell the drugs to fix it, although the drugs have side effects that make you even more sick, so now I'm going to sell you more drugs. The most productive farming in the world is the 100 trillion, the 400 to 500 trillion cells that make up your body. That's a very productive farm. Oh, and by the way, the farm pays for itself. It has a job, and it's tax debt, tax and wage and slave debt, right? Or was it wages, taxes, and debt slave? It's brilliant. And oh, by the way, where did it come out of? It came out of World War II and pre-World War II Nazi studies in medicine. Who was the guy who was brought over in Operation Paperclip to join with General Armstrong at Air Force Medical, who was instrumental in much of what we have in medicine in the United States today? It wasn't Mengele. He was too low level. It was Mengele's top boss, the number one medical guy in the Nazi regime, was brought in to work directly with General Armstrong at the Air Force to head up Air Force Medical, which is where most all this advanced shit come out of from the 1940s on. People can look it up.
And yet people, and this is where, people need to have somebody tell them what to do. So now it's the reverse. And I saw a girl the other day, on my social media. She was talking how she had a friend who had eaten Ritz cracker, and the Ritz cracker came out of a peanut factory or something like that. And I'm just like, they need to disclose where these things are made. I'm like, yeah, you probably just want to avoid Ritz crackers, and then you don't even have to worry about any of this stuff.
I saw something earlier today. Here's my rule. And then I just saw something this morning on it. If it doesn't rot within 3 days, don't put it in your body. Literally. Because anything that's actually healthy has healthy microbes in it, and it's got, it's raised in a certain way, and it's not over, processed and pasteurized and all this other stuff. If it doesn't rot within 3 days, 4 or 5 days, depending on what it is, non-refrigerated, don't put it in your body.
So I'm pulling this up right now just to see what's in a Ritz cracker. Have you ever looked at this?
Probably a whole list of crap.
So unbleached enriched wheat flour. I probably don't want to eat that. Soybean enriched wheat flour. Unbleached. Soybean and or canola oil and or palm oil. High fructose corn syrup and sugar. Salt. Calcium phosphate and or baking soda. Soy lecithin, which I believe is more seed oil, and natural flavor, whatever that means.
I wonder what that what the whole spectrum of things is covered under enriched.
Lecithin. Right? What is soy lecithin?
Yeah, it's an extract. The soy lecithin helps with the increasing of estrogen production.
So this person was worried about a rich cracker getting made in a peanut factory. You see what's wrong with this country? Like,
Doesn't like Jimmy Carter.
so I'm sorry, I digressed.
That's
But
okay.
it seems that we're in the midst of a civil war on the elite level, and
Yes.
my theory is the WEF 2.0, which would consist of Elon, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, um, why am I blanking out his name? Commerce Secretary Lutkin, Howard Lutkin, um, Bezos, Zuckerberg. They're looking at this and saying, all right, what do we need WEF? What do we need Soros? What do we need Schwab? We don't need any of those people. We're the ones that they've built the instruments for all this. These people are disposable. We'll infiltrate the MAGA movement. JD Vance is one of their guys, right? He came from that world. Now we have a clear path for the next 12 years, potentially. I mean, because, and before you answer, the CBDC is here. I know some people, they might not think it is, but if you really think about it, you really look at it, we do everything through our phone. Yes, they haven't completely, like, the foundation is there. You do everything through your phone. You pay for things with your phone. You check in with things with your phone. So that's the device. Am I wrong? Am I partially right? Am I?
Well, I don't think that we can know, because people at every level of society do whatever they can get away with, and they can't always get away with it. And in the late 90s, when I was in Silicon Valley in the fintech space, and telecommunications, we had the conversations at, social events, the VC parties and startup parties, and just the, Silicon Valley elite, and sometimes down at house parties in LA and Orange County, et cetera, that the pitchforks were coming. We knew that the changes that we were making were fundamentally changing things. One branch of people were, well, total and absolute control. One, that's the Nazis, basically, that Nazi mindset. I don't, want to get caught up on the label, but, it's that. And we need to be careful with fascism, because we already have fascism. That's a, partnering between industry, corporatism. That's really what fascism is, corporatism.
People think we live in a capitalist society in the United States.
We haven't been a capitalist society for over a century. Since FDR, we have not had a capitalist society. We have had a corporatist fascist system since FDR, and really going back to starting with Woodrow Wilson, et cetera, right? Who started to put the framework in place. So, the Nazi faction, and again, I'm just using that label as a description of a type of people and mindset. The resentfuls is, okay, total and absolute control, and that's your WEFies. They have their useful idiots that they use always to gain total absolute power and control, and that's the Marxists. And the Marxists were, well, let's kill everybody off because, the planet. And then there was another, the other loosely responsibles faction was like, well, no, this dirty freedom works, and how do we have the right amount of information flows and controls to prevent the other two factions, the two resentfuls factions, from doing what the fuck they're trying to do, because that kills millions and billions of people, and we don't want that. But we need some tools and resources and information control so we can know what the hell they're doing using technologies and telecommunications, et cetera. But at the same time, this, dirty freedom meaning it's not precise and it's not clean and it's got a lot of mistakes and people do wild and crazy shit, but it works. It allows for innovation and creation and expansion and growth and constructive destruction, etc. So okay, well, we got to strike a balance. And so we use the example of the credit score in China and all that. Most of that's BS. Some of it's true, but most of what's been going on in China, because I was there in the early 2000s when some of this stuff was starting to be built out, was China's been trying to prevent color revolutions in China because the US and the UK and the EU has been trying to color revolution China since the 90s.
Is Israel part of that then too?
Yeah, of course, but Israel's, useful idiots themselves, and they're the whipping boy, right? This whole thing about the Jews. Yeah, well, they're bad Jews, but there's bad Irish, and there's bad Scotch, and there's bad Germans, and you know what I mean? It's like the Jews. Um, I had a strange conversation with a Rockefeller, the son of kind of Rockefeller, not a Rockefeller, but out of nowhere, just random, reached out to me on a Sunday through LinkedIn one time. And I had a friend out in the DC area, shall we say, vet him before I talked to him. And he collaborated or corroborated some things I've been thinking, but the Jews have been whipping boys. I don't know if you know that concept or idea. The whipping boy.
No.
Whipping boy is an ancient concept, and it's in every culture. It's that there's somebody in the court or in the family, the high net worth families circle, that when somebody who's a member of the family does something wrong or needs to be punished, but can't because then that would cause so much disruption, etc., then there's this other person who lives in the court, lives in the house, gains the benefits of, but isn't really a member of the family, and they get punished for it. And it's a Faustian deal. It's a trade-off. The individual gets to live above their means, gets to live protected, but under the protections of the house or the kingdom or whatever it is. But every once in a while, they're going to get the shit kicked out of them and take the blame for some shit that needs to happen, because if the person was really guilty, was punished, it would cause so much disruption, it might bring the house or the kingdom down. So I suspect, looking at it, and I'm more and more confident of this, that sometime around the Crusades, extending up into the 1600s, there was a Faustian deal made with the Jews. Come live in Europe. You'll be able to live here. You'll have our protections. You'll be able to build wealth. You'll be able to have status. You won't have to pay the tax, and you won't have to worry about all the steady, the Islamic kind of hatreds of you, the Semite on Semite kind of hatreds. But every once in a while, we're going to have to use you as a whipping boy just to kind of keep things going, and you're going to take the blames for some horrible shit we need to do, and we're going to kill some of your people and confiscate some of your assets, but you get to tell us which ones, who that is. I suspect this whole, when you put it in that context and you understand the whipping boy and you go back and look at the history of it and the role of it, and we still have it today, we just don't call it that anymore. I suspect more and more of the Jews are the whipping boys.
So China, this was all put in place to prevent color revolutions by Western civilization.
China firewall was designed to prevent outside influences from being able to do color revolutions. Yes. And then, so what do? Well, you're not allowing us to do color revolutions, so you're a totalitarian, because somehow freedom means the ability for the U.S. and UK to color revolution you. That's freedom.
Do you see what I said in regards to WEF 2.0
I don't think so. Yeah, so terribly sorry. So yeah, thank you for bringing it back. I don't think so. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I think quite the opposite. I believe that there is controls that they're trying to put in place to prevent Europe and the UK from color revolutioning us. Might be too late. So they are trying to put in place algorithms, logic systems, get into certain informational flow systems, be able to understand balance of payments, structures of payments, all these types of things that they're mapping out. What they're trying to do is not control the American people in terms of have this totalitarian control. What they're trying to do is work out how do we prevent fifth generation warfare from fucking Europeans, which, by the way, and this I disagree with Tom substantively on. He's absolutely right. Most of this has come out of the city of London, but because that was the heart of the empire. And we conquered Europe in World War II. That's what happened. So all that fuckery was in the city of London. And yes, it goes back before, but we've been occupied since 1688. So what we're trying to do, what these guys are trying to do, is they're trying to prevent Europe, which is done, and the UK, which is infiltrated and occupied, from color revolutioning in the United States. I'm going to use a reference, okay? Because I know you're a movie guy, right? And I remember seeing part of an interview you and Tom did talking movies, right? There's that scene in The Matrix when Neo meets the architect, right? The architect. And I believe he'd had a conversation with the Oracle prior. And then he comes to realize the Oracle is allowed by the architect. And that they had tried the perfect control and it had failed again and again and again. And so they had to allow the irreverence, they had to allow the imprecision, they had to allow the dirty freedom, knowing full well that it would periodically, in the case of the English speaking people, every 400 years, lead to a revolution. That's, Musk and Thiel and all these guys, they're very intelligent people. As is Trump, by the way. Trump's a different generation. So it's, a lot of the concerns that people have with Trump about he's not this and he's not doing that. And he says, well, he's a boomer. He's a boomer generation. He's my parents' age. And he came up in a fundamentally different world than we live in now. So not to give him a pass for, mistakes that he may made, but he's done an extraordinary job this time of surrounding himself with Xers and millennials. I don't know if people realize this, but what Trump's actually done in the singular event is he has actually transitioned power from the boomers and what's left of the silent generation to us Xers and millennials. He's transitioned power. It's never going back. They are no longer in power and control, and they'll fight it out. But that's really fundamentally what's happened. It hasn't happened in the UK yet. And I'll be quite frank, I couldn't care less what happens to Europe. Europe's the enemy, been our enemy for over 1,000 years. Europe's been occupying my beloved United Kingdom for 400 years, almost 400 years, 360 years. 340 years.
When you say he's transitioned it, then meaning the people that he's put in place in his cabinet, like Hegseth,
yeah, correct. And then Don Jr., right? He's transitioned his own empire to Don Jr. So what has happened with Peter Thiel and Musk and these others is that Gen X, just like happened in World War II, by the way, because Patton and Eisenhower and Montgomery and these others were all the Gen X of their time, the nomad generation, as Strauss and Howe would say. And then they've brought with them millennials and Zoomers, Gen Z. Power's transitioned to Gen X now. And we know our parents and we know the world they built extraordinarily well because we've been there since the beginning. We've been there through this entire 50-year period. Us older Xers are, I've got a few years yet, but I'm closing on 60. We've been around this whole time. We've watched it all from the inside. Millennials know how to use the tools and the resources, and they're more group and community oriented than us Xers. So they help with those dynamics. And then Zoomers are they're unique. The Zoomer generation is fascinating to me. They're extraordinary. I hear kids in their 20s, teens. These kids got their heads on straight. You know why? Because they've been online since they were born. By the time they're 12, they've seen it all. You know what I mean?
It's true, man.
By the time they're 12, yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I go to the gym, and there's some young people in there in their early 20s. And these kids, I say kids. Why they are kids to me, because I'll be 47. They work hard. And what's funny is I'll talk to them sometimes and just kind of pick their brains on where their head's at. And when I was 20 years old, I drank, I smoked, and I get smashed 3-4 nights a week, and that was a priority to me.
Yeah.
I wanted to live like Animal House. That was my at that age. But these kids, the ones that are in the gym and stuff, they don't drink or barely.
Yeah.
They watch what they eat. They're like on carnivore. Yeah. It's just
traditional values. Yeah.
I don't remember 20-year-olds. When I was going through it, I don't. It was also a different time because you didn't have iPhones or social media or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I had Ben Kelleran on, the other day, and just some of the stuff he's doing, and Will Tanner, and there's, I think that probably being in the world that we're in too, you come across all these like-minded people. But yeah, some of the younger people, they give me, I hate the word hope, but they do give me a sense of hope. And girls, not as much. I don't see that as much on the girl side. I don't know if you do.
No.
Yeah.
No. So Ben and I went skiing a couple weekends ago. Will and I are going to do Tommy's show next Tuesday, talking about this, English civilization and English civilization's immune system. These guys give me, even Tommy, in his own, Fucking Irish way, right? These guys give me great confidence. You're absolutely right on the girls. I'm not seeing it yet.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of before you answer
structures? Yeah.
What is it? Say it.
Incentive structures.
And they feed off the social media too. They feed off the attention and the I think Rogan said it once, the agave, that putting a story on Instagram and a half naked photo and the attention that you get from that. They feed more off of that than in the real world.
It's incentive. So this is another thing, are we going to make it or not? This is another thing we have to come to grips with is it's time to remove women from power. If not, they will genocide us, because women at the cellular level, hormonal level up, are wired for genetic warfare or genetic competition or genetic fitness, however you want to say it. From the gene level up, every cell in their body, every minute of their life, every moment of their life is designed to pursue highest fitness for their offspring. And of course, that all gets hijacked with birth control and, having lifted the restrictions for sex and all these other kinds of things that were a check and balance on, this natural inclination of women to compete with one another. You put women in positions of power. Like there's several papers that have been written on the propensity for female leaders to go to war versus male leaders. There's other studies that have been done on the role of estrogen versus testosterone in violence. Turns out estrogen is the hormone behind violence. People look at these guys all roided out on Dianabol. Oh, they're the roid rage, testosterone rage. It's not the testosterone. They've got the extra testosterone in their system, which it produces extra what? Estrogen. The guys that go on estrogen blockers and estradiol blockers, etc., have reduced violence, even though they're doing steroids. So estrogen upregulates for violence, but because of their smaller physical size, women don't tend to do the violence themselves. They induce other men to do it through various ways, or other women. Because men have the more physical size, testosterone downregulates for violence. Because at a larger size, though with much different physical, capabilities between men, a guy gets, and you've seen it, back when we were younger and out at the bars and drinking, etc., or in school days, etc. Guy gets mouthy, gets violent. He might get his arm broken or his nose broken or his face broken, or he might get killed. So while testosterone has made us larger, physically stronger, more capable of violence should it be necessary, it has also at the same time built a control mechanism into us to down regulate for violence. Because if we exercise violence, there's a very high chance we're going to get permanently fucked up. Women don't have that restriction. And they're genetically, in every aspect of their being, wired to competitive fitness, to get the best mate for their children, the most resources, the most assets, etc., and to eradicate competitive genes.
It was I've watched old Ayn Rand interviews when she was on Phil Donahue and talking about
woman. Yeah, brilliant woman.
Yeah, even just saying it now, and you should go back and watch them again. Where she was, a person in the audience asked if she ever saw a woman to be president, and she said, "Oh, you are nuts."
Yes.
To control the army, to send soldiers to die.
Yes. Yeah. Control of the nukes.
She said, "Senator, congressperson, yeah, I'm okay with that." I think she's something like that.
Think so.
You don't even think that?
I don't think so. No, particularly not when Congress can declare war. Look how powerful Nancy Pelosi became. Look what Look at the conjunction between Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and Victoria Nuland. How many million have died?
Yeah, but you just saying that, I could hear the leftists. Ah!
I don't care. I'm done caring. I'm done caring. I have a daughter. I have a beautiful, wonderful, brilliant daughter, Zoomer, right? I want her to be everything she wants to be in the world. I don't want her to be in power of anything. Now, do I want her to have influence and say and a role in place in decision making? Absolutely. But do I want her to, she had a meltdown last night over nothing. I'm sitting here today, I still don't know what the hell that was all about. But if she had some capabilities, she would have killed somebody yesterday, probably me. For what reason, I have no idea. Literally to this day, I'm like, whatever, right? So I say that as somebody who is instinctually wired to protect women and children. Instinctually. Right? They should never be in control. Never be in power. Now, does that mean that all men should be? Oh, hell no either, right? We got a whole lot of trashy fucking men. Estrogen, estrogen-driven men, or men that don't have healthy testosterone cycles, right? So we got our own problems on the male side too. We should never give women control and power of anything. Nothing that, let me rephrase, nothing that has to do with economics, finance, or death, life and death.
So healthcare too, huh?
Yeah, no. Look at all these female doctors that all came out in support of the COVID jab. And look how virulent they were and how willing they were to destroy the careers of others. Look at all these murderous nurses.
Yeah, the nursing field forever changed for me with some of the people that I knew after that whole debacle. The behavior and
Look at
the
teachers. Teachers are another one. Everyone, oh, women should. When did our country go to shit? When we stopped having men teachers. Does that mean early childcare and all that? Maybe, I don't know, right? There's some interesting studies that come out that children, of course, do far better with both parents, far better. But if they're going to be in a single family home, on every metric measured, children do better with their father than their mother at every age and both genders. As long as the father's a good, good father, right? Caveat there.
Yeah, my friend Matt Smith, his son Maxim, they're writing a book, The Preparation, and what he's doing with him, instead of going to the standard 4-year college, he's got him, EMT and just learned how to sail, and I think the next thing is he's going to be a pilot, learn how to be a pilot.
Awesome.
Even Matt Bracken, we did a conversation. Matt Bracken suggested he should go volunteer at a soup kitchen.
Yeah. No, it's all great stuff. I want to go back. I want to take this here because of where this is gone. I want to go back to Europe, right? I want to go back to who the real enemy is. The real enemy is women. And I don't mean women writ large. It's certain women in power and positions of power, whether it's visible or behind the scenes. Who runs Europe? Van der Leyen, Baerbock, right? It's either women or estrogen-laden, effeminate males who are even more dangerous because now they're trying to prove that they're a man. So they're totally and absolutely beholden to unhealthy matriarch women. And they've got a chip on their shoulder because they're fucking pussies. Violent, cruel, manipulative, murderous pussies. So our real enemy is estrogen right now. And it just naturally happens in times of ease and comfort. We created an artificial environment post-World War II in which estrogen has taken over everything, both in male and female. Estrogen upregulates for violence.
Are we at our weakest point right now? I'm talking about society as a whole.
We are, if we understand what we're really up against and set to correcting the balance, which we're trying to. We still just don't recognize who the real enemy is. We're not, if we don't do that, and if we go into this fight, into the hot part of it, and it will go hot, but it'll be low simmering hot initially.
Let's talk. Go ahead. Finish your thought because I want to know. I want to get your perception of
it
low
can get
simmering
worse.
hot.
It can get lower is what I'm getting at. It can get if it goes low simmering hot, cartels, gangs, terrorists, they're all the same group, all backed and organized, coordinated by the same group, right? Which is the European Praetorians. If we don't accept who the enemy really is and how they really operate, we don't take this on, it's going to get way worse. It'll get way worse.
Describe for me, 'cause as we sit here today, I don't see us having the strength or the will to take this on. It's too painful for people to listen to this conversation you and I have. And let me be clear because I get a lot of shit for this. Not everybody. I know there are people that are in the fight that are paying attention, but the masses don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear you and I talk about this. They can't handle it.
Yeah. So Clay Martin and I, who's a buddy and friend of mine. We talked for an hour or two yesterday.
Great guy, by the way.
He is a great guy. Yeah. Um, the difference between far northern peoples and lower and central latitude peoples is that our ancestors, not too long ago, centuries ago, but really, let's say 1,000 years ago and before, when everything about us was really developing evolutionarily and epigenetically, genetically and epigenetically, culturally, civilizationally, etc., we had to contend with one massive force that for 4 to 6 months out of the year meant that there wasn't much nutrition and there was extreme cold. And if we hadn't planned and prepared the 6 to 8 months that we had available for those things, and we hadn't organized and coordinated ourselves properly, we might not make it through that winter. It meant that we couldn't have as many children, making every single child more valuable. It meant that our women were more valuable because we still lost a good number in childbirth, up to 60%. It meant that we had to think longer. We had to plan better. We had to think ahead. We had to think in 11-year cycles because of the solar cycle. Solar maxima, solar minima, it's an 11-year cycle, and that fundamentally changes the climate. So we seeded, the men were out doing things, sometimes, hunting for a month at a time, planning, doing things. So we seeded every life was more valuable. Everything had to be more deliberately done. We ceded the choice of life and death to our women because it was the product of their wombs. The most valuable, expensive resource we had were our women's wombs. And so we ceded control over life and death, who we went to war with, who we fought. Did we fight? Did we not? Did we negotiate? Did we partner with? Did we destroy, et cetera? We ceded that to our women because it was the product of their wombs that was going to pay that price. And every one of those lives was way more valuable to us than people who lived in much more comfortable climates and environments that could be more frivolous, that could be more indiscriminately violent, that could not have to plan as much, not have to think ahead as much, who could dominate their women because it worked. It worked for us right up, in some parts of, Russia and the northern latitudes and the peoples of the northern latitudes. It worked pretty well for us up until about the 14th, 15th century, when everything started to calm down, stabilize. We industrialized. We changed the fundamental dynamic of how valuable the wombs of our women were. And medicine improved, steadily over the next couple of centuries. So us from northern societies and civilizations, we naturally defer to our women. And there was reasons for that historically, anthropologically, physiologically, et cetera, that were very valid. But once we got into into the era of comfort and ease, those reasons weren't valid anymore. And our women could become genocidal and murderous. Because one, there was a lot more of us. Two, we had the resources. Each life and each choice of what we chose to do with that life wasn't as precious or valuable anymore. We didn't take control back. We left it with them because that's how we're wired. That's how our culture is wired. Right? Ave Maria, which is a little different because that comes from, the South, but, we've got it, in the more comfortable latitudes. So these traits that were natural for us and productive for us under the natural circumstances of the world for thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not several million years, haven't been valid in the last 300 or 400 years, but nothing's changed as to our nature. Nothing's really changed as to power, how we in Northern Europeans, Northern latitude peoples, and you see this also in the Mongols. You see it, like people don't realize this. Yes, the Mongol men were conquering the world, but it was the Mongol queens who led the kingdoms, literally. There's a great book called The Secret History of the Mongol Queens. So we have a problem where we are fundamentally conditioned to defer to our women because of how precious their wombs are. But that's not true anymore. And not only is it not true, but those same women that we've been ceding power to don't have kids anymore. So we've given power to some, we naturally instinctively give power to and protect and shield and manage the assets of. And oh, by the way, women have always owned 80 to 90% of the assets just because of demographic, statistical demographics alone. Like if you look historically back in the old royal houses, noble houses, even today, it isn't the men that had the money. They might have the title. It's the wife's family that had the money and the connections and power. And sometimes the wife's family was 500 years older than the man's family. Didn't matter if he was a king or a prince. It's still that way. So if you look at Stalin's inner circle, and there's some people who've done some work on this. If you look at Stalin's inner circle and who were the most bloody voices, it was the wives of his close inner circle. Same with Nazi Germany. Yeah, the men did this stuff. Nobody ever talks about their wives. Nobody ever looks at the documentation. Some people have. So I'm not this, I'm fundamentally to my core, particularly as a father of a pregnant daughter, wired to protect and shield and shelter women. But it's destroying our modern world. It's destroying women. Oh my God, look how unhappy they look at the, and forgive me all the statistics and all this, but half of them on antidepressants, something like 50% or 45% are going to be 40 years old or something with no children here in the next year or two. Look at women, how they just destroy each other. Oh my God. I get my daughter's got teen friends, right? And I don't know why I never saw this when I was a teen. I was probably too busy trying to be a dorky jock or something, or I was just oblivious. I watched the teens, like 3 boys will come over and they're goofing and being dumb teen boys, etc. The girls come over and within minutes, they're tearing somebody apart. Some other girl, right? It's like, whoa. And we're going to put them in charge of things. We're going to pump you through college, get you master's degrees and doctor's degrees, so you're the only one who can qualify for some position in some bureaucracy or agency that has control over life or death or economic, who gets the largesse of it, an economic system. That's some scary shit.
And I can even take it a step further, and I'm generalizing here, but, how about Botox, fillers, Ozempic, all this stuff being utilized? I would think, and I haven't done any research on it, but majority, more women than men that are using all this stuff.
Yeah.
What does that do for the psyche?
Yeah. So
I live right next to Scottsdale, so it's like you see all this stuff.
Yeah. The plastic surgery center of the Southwest. Which it is. I used to live in Tucson, by the way, so we used to make fun of Phoenix.
As
But
you spend enough time here, you know.
yeah. I had friends at Tempe, at ASU at the time as well. Um, it's not just women; it's effeminate men as well. And the way unhealthy women dominate and control is they, the unhealthy matriarchs is they, and the effeminate males is they they allow predatory men who at least protect them, but they allow predatory men to go out there and be predatory, men and women, because it isn't just men that are predatory, right? That's this whole Epstein list thing. It's people that were allowed to be predatory because, that's who they are. And then they're incentivized and rewarded for that predation, but you got to protect the unhealthy, this genetic warfare that's going on. You have to protect the ones doing it, shield them, you got to be the whipping boy for them.
You bring up Epstein. Do you find any relevance in that whole thing that's coming out today, or what are your thoughts on the circus?
That list has been scrubbed so many times. We can't trust any name that ever comes out on it. It could be, and the thing is, it could be 100% legit, but at this point, it's been so long. There's so much, if it was released right away, if we would have gone to revolution right then. But how can I trust anything that's on it now? You know what I mean? How can I trust anything? And sadly, the people that are doing it could be completely legit. All those names could be legit, but how can I trust anything on there? And the thing that really concerns me, and I was thinking, it's a great question, by the way. I was concerned about this earlier today because, there was the whole, excuse me, and I participated in it too because it's kind of funny. But, what is your Epstein list outfit? And I did Michael Caine from Get Shorty, with the Savile Row suit and the shotgun, because I love that movie and I love that character.
Which John Travolta's movie?
No. Oh. John Travolta was a remake.
Oh, that was a remake.
Michael Caine movie. And you got to see the Michael Caine movie. It's so much better, right? I think it's called Get Shorty, but it's basically what the Get Shorty is built on. Anyways, my concern is not who's on the list. Those people should be, if they're legit and they're on the list, they literally should just be taken out and shot. Period. No legal, no, we're at a point stage right now where they just need to get taken out and shot. My concern is all the 10 times that number of people who are compromised in other ways. Given careers, given money, made famous, research funded, startup company funded, right? The thing is that the pedophiles is bad. And I know Murray goes off about this and other guys, et cetera. I know I have friends, colleagues and friends who do counter trafficking stuff. It's bad. It's really bad. But it's not my area, so I can't speak definitively to that, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that to other people. What I do know, because I was there and saw it in Silicon Valley and New York and London and Paris and elsewhere, was all the other ways in which people were being compromised by the same network, by the very same people, by the way, by getting funded, by getting the research funded, by getting published, by getting fame, career, job placement, promotions. Like most people don't, somebody brought it up the other day, but Epstein was heavily involved in the mRNA investments. He was heavily involved in genetics. I remember him coming to Silicon Valley back in the late 90s and investing in startup companies, biotech companies, telecom companies. Not him, through him, right? So this infrastructure, all this stuff. So again, the list, if people on it, they're legit, just take them out and shoot them. Confiscate all their fucking assets. Put them down. Done. Otherwise, it all gets tied up in courts and legal actions and this and that and all that. And most of them will walk free anyways. Right?
How has she been allowed to? How they let her live? Because do you believe he killed
Because
himself?
of her father. No, he didn't. No.
You don't think the
No
CIA did some type of psychological?
Well, maybe the fell on the sword thing. But and I don't know, but they probably killed him because he was somebody who would talk, and he's not the kind of guy to kill himself. With her, she's alive because of her father, because there are a vast number of people in positions of power across the entire West who owe her father. Robert Maxwell's a piece of work, man. Piece of work. And more than likely, she's doing this book, etc. She's going, because she was molested and conditioned and trained from the time she was a child, right? Which is something that happens. Often people that are trafficked themselves by their own family or others become traffickers. Leonardo DiCaprio.
What was he?
Don't ask me how I know that one. Oh, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Certain friend of mine's nightclub in New York City, the upstairs room.
Well, are you moving on from that already? Can't we talk about that for a minute? I've never heard that before.
I'll leave that one there. Demi Moore. She's the one that compromised Andrew. She herself was so. There is a known thing, right, that those who are trafficked sometimes become the traffickers. And I'll use it, you want an example, Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django, right? Stockholm Syndrome, right? Patty Hearst. Stuff's real. Ghislaine also can be used as deflection. So if I'm going to create an artificial list and I need somebody to validate that list, games within games within games.
So she'll just spend the rest of her life in some type of prison, and
she's living comfortably. She's fine. She's been in a prison her whole life since she was a child because of all of this that was done to her and then that she was involved in, etc. This has got to be a vacation.
Do you think the P. Diddy stuff matters then?
I think that matters more. It's more current. It's more immediate. I think that's why they went after him. It also goes after a different group. There's an actual overlap. That shit's pretty bad. Like I was saying this about Justin Bieber a long time ago. I know about the white parties. I've known about the white parties since the early 2000s.
The white parties were that was his things in the Hamptons. I mean, I remember seeing that stuff on MTV.
Well, it's way beyond that. White parties were all over, by the way. There were white parties all over. The thing is that there were parties within parties, right? That's not what, so the thing we have to be careful of, and I know from personal direct experience of people, there are people that went to white parties that knew nothing about those things because that was a party inside the party. It's the same thing with Epstein. There may be a whole lot of people on Epstein's list, et cetera, that had nothing to do with any of that because that's what they do. That's how these predatory parasites work, right? They hide what they're doing inside of other things, so they do an event and then they hide what they're doing inside that event. And then if they ever get found out by anybody there, well, they can't say anything because there's guilt by association. And it's cover. People are like, oh, that doesn't happen. I was at that party. What are you talking about?
Why do you think that they went after Diddy
to get his tapes?
But why? But that stuff, those tapes have been there for years. Why do they feel the need to go after it? when they did?
A whole lot of things were figured out when, why do people, do we genuinely think that Elon Musk bought Twitter for 40 some odd $billion because he was concerned about free speech? Twitter is the biggest intelligence collection operation by the private sector in human history. And not by a little bit, but on orders of magnitude unimaginable. Because all these agencies, all these entities, all these parasites, all these predators, they were all freely talking through Twitter. They were all connected, APIs and right, and email systems in the company and relationships and plants they had there, etc. It was the biggest coup. Where does that take you? Okay, well, there's another treasure trove of intel that we can use to weaponize. Diddy's tapes.
From all those white parties?
A lot more than just the white parties. A lot more than just the white parties. Conversations, discussions, all kinds of things.
Does that information ever get out?
I don't know. And I will say this as well, right? Is pretty. I'm not very smart, honestly, but I look at things for a long time, right? And I got a terrible memory for some things, so I got to simplify them down, right? That's why I wrote the book, The Eternal War, because I was looking at all this complex stuff for 50 years. I was trying to figure out how do I make sense of it, right? Remember it. Having looked at history for a very long time, there's a certain amount of, I understand why even responsibles would not release these lists. Because the polite society and functional society is a very thin veneer. And it's predicated upon some assumptions. And one assumption in particular, which is that for the most part, people are good. And that's not true. And so if you release historically, when people have seen too much of the truth, whatever cohesion is there totally collapse, and you have revolution or just all out collapse. So it's not always good to release everything. And you want a prime example, anybody who's been in any kind of a real operation, tactical operation, serious intel operation, but really the stuff where people are getting killed or destroyed, they'll tell you. They'll if you can ever get them to talk about it. Civilization, polite society is a very thin artificial veneer on the reality of humanity. Humanity is the reason that we experience such ecstatic joy at the beauty of something that's humane is because we know just beneath the surface how inhumane we really are. Always, everywhere, all the time. There are very few people that are truly humane, and Peterson touches on this, Jung touched on it, but to be truly humane, you have to be an absolute monster who's in total control always.
What do you think happens to him? I sometimes wonder if he's even still alive anymore.
Did he?
Yeah.
I think he popped up. I saw an image recently, bearded and all that. He's probably still alive. He's somebody who'll talk. That's a piece of shit. That's a weak piece of shit. That's a predator. That motherfucker will talk.
So they're going to have to remove him then from the earth.
Protective custody. They learned from the Epstein thing. They learn.
If they're not going to need to kill him, they'll just...
He'll go to prison. He'll do some deals, but he'll go to prison for a while.
What about JFK? Does that matter to you anymore?
Only if we get to finally bring down the Bush family. But he's dead now. So it is necessary at times when it no longer really matters to show the sins of our fathers and to demonstrate contrition and a recognition. Sometimes it's necessary, but you don't do it when it could tear everything down. That's another piece, right? The other piece is healthy princes are constantly fighting all out on every dimension to provide even that veneer of polite civil society. And we don't respect that enough.
Yeah. Well, you wonder how much has that been scrubbed as well, right? By the time it were to finally be released.
Oh, it's been, yeah. So, there's that saying, history is written by the winners. No, it's not. Winners are too busy enjoying the spoils of winning. History is written by those who need to. History is written and rewritten by those who need us to think of history in such a way to support them either as a victor that they're not or a victim that they're not.
Do you, in the short term, in the United States where we're at, what do you suggest to people that are really riding high on what is occurring? I call it the breads and circuses right now, because you know me, I'm a skeptic of everything, and
that Lebanese blood.
Yeah, right. And I keep coming back to my conversation with Matt Smith in regards to, I don't know if you heard it.
That's right, by the way. I think that was a great conversation. I think he's right. Maybe not on everything, but
with the dollar and where they're moving into this new.
Yeah.
You think they're being the adults in the room and taking?
Oh, absolutely. See, here's the thing that people don't realize is that there are good guys, or there's good bad guys. And the good bad guys, they don't want their life to change either. They like the American way of life. They've done very well with the American way of life. And unlike the other two folks, right? The Marxists and the Nazis that are trying to totally control us and genocide us. These guys, they like their life. They like the world the way it is. They enjoy it. They spend, their whole lives fighting for this. They're not looking for total and absolute control. It's the last thing they want because they don't want it to be turned on them. That's why Musk and Thiel and all these other guys, everything that's happened since Kennedy is happened is because I'm a billionaire. I don't want you coming after me. I don't want you using this shit against me. I don't want you trying to control me when you take a whim to do it. I mean, that's the truth. This is what happened. What happened is they tried to kill Trump. They tried to destroy, tried to completely, totally control the billionaire class. And, the princes, and some of them said, yeah, fuck you. Now they have to, what they're doing now, and it's brilliant, the Doge, which is funny because, Doge is the leader in Venice, right? The Doge, right? So it's got another meaning that nobody really talks about. To me, it's funny. I'm a dork, so whatever. It's funny to me. Yeah, they are putting controls and systems in place and algorithms, but it ain't to put controls on us. It's put controls on this damn government and the NGOs and the unaccountable systems and the resentfuls, whether they're Marxists or Nazis, doesn't matter. They're trying to put these controls and information systems in place to turn this back around on the system. And they're doing a pretty good job of it right now. And this is one area that expert systems, we don't have frickin' AI, but sophisticated expert systems can do a really good job and can be very effective. So you can't control, humanity's on the outside of the balloon. The balloon's constantly expanding. You can never control that. The only way you can do that is you have to kill everybody. Right? You cannot control the outside, what's on the outside of the balloon from what's inside on an expanding balloon. Unless you kill everybody off, or massive numbers of people, which is what Marxists and Nazis really like to do. So it would never work. It's never going to work, this whole total control thing. People just find ways around it, or we'll just turn the damn power off and make sure it stays off. Right? So if you want a functioning whole society, you want to be secure and safe, there's a certain amount of, we've got bad actors out there in the humanity and populace, and we've got to be careful of that. And we should use what tools we can. But where the real genocidal, murderous, dangerous people are on the inside of the balloon, well, you can deal with that. You can turn that informational system to look inside the balloon, right? We call it core, edge, and last mile. You can put resources and assets in the edge that has some view into the ever-expanding last mile, but really from those core assets or the edge assets are looking into the core, making sure that the core doesn't kill us, that the core doesn't get so corrupted, so evil, that it kills us all. That's what's happening. It's what they did in China, by the way. This whole China firewall, that's exactly what they did. Chinese are brilliant. They've been around for 4,500 years. There's villages in China that have been lived in unbroken for 55,000 years.
And that's what they're trying to duplicate here.
Yes. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to prevent the fucking Europeans, the stateless actors, who've got $100 trillion that they've squirreled away in offshore structures and have entire paramilitary armies in the forms of gangs and terrorists and, self-funding paramilitary groups in the form of cartels and gangs and, transnational gangs and terrorists. And, $100 trillion right now, it's a little over that, in offshore wealth. And, I think Alex or Tom said this. Yeah, so cash flow's been turned off. They're not funding their paramilitary operations against this with cash flow anymore, but they've got more than enough assets to fight a fight for 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. And their paramilitary is self-funding through trafficking, which is somewhere between $600 billion and $1 trillion a year. And that's bottom line cash.
Do you see that escalating with Mexico in regards to the cartels, both in the United States and in Mexico?
Yes. This gets ugly unless we take this on, and they're everywhere in their community. My kid had a party one time, social birthday party, and we had fucking El Norte kids show up at the house. They don't go to their school, but they know the kids. They're kids. They're teens. This is fucking Idaho. They're everywhere, and they're at every level, and they know your kids. They're at the parties your kids are at. This shit this is the problem that we have to deal with. This is the real enemy. We need, they're doing all the things to prevent Europeans and the Europeans in control of the UK from world warring us. Then we got to take on their paramilitaries, their self-funding paramilitaries. which is the cartels, is the transnational gangs, is the terrorist organizations. We have to take them on in our own homes, our own communities. This isn't just about deportations. This is excising, and it isn't like cancer. This is a full-on HIV-like parasitic infection of the host, which is our country and our economies and our communities. Every organ, this infection is everywhere, and it is virulent. And the moment you move against it, it will go hot. It will go murderous. I have to worry about, my teen daughter, right? Somebody takes umbrage at me, tells the El Nortes, kill his kid. Some 16-year-old kills my daughter. Some fucking party or in between. You know what I mean? It's where we are. But we have to do it, or we lose everything. We can make all the successes of preventing World War III, all the successes of fixing the financial system, all the successes of resetting the judiciary back to constitutionality, all these things, and lose everything to this virulent, self-funding pathogen that is criminality, that is the paramilitary for the Europeans and their cutouts here in the US and in the UK. We have to defeat this here at home.
How close is it to the next stage?
We can't really say yet because I don't know that we really understand what we're up against and that we have to do this. My suspicion right now is I don't know. It's poised. It's poised. And I'm hearing things from different people. They're ready. They're ready to go. We're not. I talk to law enforcement guys. I got friends of mine that have been cops since we were in school. And it's so disturbing. Talking to them, listening to them about, they're rolling guys up, Sinaloa guys. Well, again, the big cartels, somebody had this conversation the other day, which is pretty good. Cartels have a small number of guys. It isn't them. It's the gangs that work for them, right? The contractors, the last mile gangs. They're the real dangerous ones. But I was talking to a friend of mine, school day friend. We've been friends for 40 some odd years. And he was caught for 32 years. They were just go bust somebody, confiscate all the drugs and the money and the weapons, and release them. They weren't U.S. citizens. They didn't have ID, couldn't ID them. Systems overloaded. Nobody was going to prosecute them. Even if they did prosecute them, what were they going to do? Right? They didn't even know which country to send them back to. And nobody was going to send them back anyways. And this has been going on for over 20 years, and it's everywhere, every community. It's just, and the departments make a bunch of money off the asset seizure and forfeiture. And this is in Idaho. This is a red state, deep red state. The problem is so bad, law enforcement can't even, they could just go through the motions.
If that's happening in Idaho, I can't even imagine how much more worse it is in Arizona where I live.
California.
Nevada.
Texas. Illinois. Colorado. It's everywhere. This is the real problem. This is the real fight. Now, all that other stuff has to happen. But this is a fight at home. And I'm not joking. This is not hyperbole, not exaggeration. I had El Norte kids show up to our house. And if I go to war with these guys, I go to, I'm on the side of let's take this problem on. One of these 16-year-olds just killed my daughter. Or worse, they'll kidnap her, get her on drugs, and prostitute her out. Kill my parents who live down the street. Rape my old my mother. Right? This is who these people are. And they're in every fucking community. And they're 15, 16-year-old kids all the way up into their 40s, 50s. We have narco states in the United States. They're already failed states. They're already basically Mexico.
Arizona, right?
And you're in one of them. Yeah. So
what other narco states do you see?
California, New Mexico, Arizona, parts of Texas, Colorado, Illinois,
Nevada.
Nevada's a mix, right? City, Las Vegas, yes. The mob, the La Costa Nostra has no real power in Las Vegas anymore. It's cartels and the NSA and CIA. Vegas is CIA. That's Meyer Lansky. Same with Hollywood, right? It's the biggest intel collection and operation in the world.
I hate Las Vegas. My friend Jim Kunstler calls it a utopia of clowns.
Yeah. I lived there for a little while. It was not my favorite place.
Yeah, I mean, how do a state like Arizona, how do you turn it back?
What was that? Big iron on his hip. I'm a Marty Robbins fan, right? Arizona Ranger, big iron on his hip. Familiar with that song?
No.
Listen to it. Big iron on his hip. What's going to happen, the only way that this works is GWAP boys get deputized and we go to war. And a lot of people are going to die. And it's going to get ugly. People get assassinated, judges get killed, and people are going to get fucked up. But if we don't do this, we're a failed narco state within the next 30 years. $1 trillion a year in cash flow. Cash. Do you think they're going to give that up? That props up the banking system. That's what's propped up the banking system for the last 20 years.
How difficult of times do you see ahead of us, even for the next 2 to 4 years? I mean, if what Matt Smith was talking about, if that's the way that's going, what you just talked about with the cartels.
The cartels are us, by the way. That's the other thing, right? Know our enemy. We created the cartels. I remember as a kid teenager, watching Ollie North in front of Congress. Senator, I do not recall. What was Ollie North there for? Iran-Contra. What was that? Taking drugs out of South and Central America and selling them into America so that to buy weapons from the Iranians, through the Iranians, for the Contras who were fighting, quote unquote, communism in South and Central America. It's all documented, right? The cartels are us. The human trafficking is us. That is the self-funding, unconventional warfare paramilitary armies of the intelligence community. The British, the UK, or the European, British, and US intelligence communities. This is what, and the terrorists are part of it. We call them terrorists, but they're drug traffickers, human traffickers. How do you think the terrorists make their frickin' money?
What do you envision the next 2 to 4 years look like then? I mean, we've covered macro, we've covered domestic.
It really depends on if the princes recognize and are ready to take on this fight. This is the real fight. Everything else is preparatory. Everything else is weeding out the mob, the criminality in all these other layers and efforts. But ultimately, you have to take out all of the foot soldiers and the capos. Ultimately, at some point, you have to do that, or you haven't taken out the mob state. You haven't taken out the mob. You haven't taken out organized crime. At some point, you're going to have to gun battle them in your own streets. So I don't know if they're going to take it on or not. I don't know when they take it on. But the only way the United States continues is we take on this fight and we fight it. And it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be right here in our own communities. but we have to.
Will it
Or my
last?
kid isn't safe. My grandkids aren't safe.
Will it last long, in your opinion?
If No, because if we commit to doing it, it'll be over in 3 to 4 years. I'm gonna give you an example. I know you're 47, so probably too young, but in the 70s or 80s, we had a lot of problems with organized crime and the gangs. And they allowed law enforcement and private citizens a little bit different, but they allowed law enforcement to go weapons hot, weapons free. A lot of people got killed. A lot of gangbangers were just straight up killed. And it calmed things down for till um, till the Clintons came in and Biden when he was in the Senate, Congress or Senate or whichever. And they did the Reform Act, the Criminal and Law Enforcement Reforms Acts. But at the same time, the CIA was ramping up drug sales in the United States. That's who's doing fentanyl. Fentanyl isn't fucking China. Same thing, crack cocaine. How do you fund your off the books, unaccountable army and auxiliary and underground, etc.? All your bribery and everything else. You sell drugs into the biggest market in the world. If fentanyl was really coming from China, we would shut that shit down a long time ago.
People, again, I come back to they don't want to know all this.
Nope.
It's too fucking painful for them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, at a certain point, the criminality gets so bad and gets so out of control that you have to fight because there is no safety or security from it anymore. And when cops are literally rolling up and just confiscating and letting people go because that's all they can do, you're at that place.
You know, how many friends I talk to, they're like, you're a doomer and you're this and you're, and they think it's just a bad time and it's going to go away. And
No, it's when you get hit with a virulent virus, you can't just wish it away. You can't wish Ebola away. You can't wish HIV away. It's not like it's going to flare up. It's not like the common cold where you get a flare-ups a couple times a year and you're good. No, there are viruses and bacterium and prions that get in your system. They fucking kill you. Might take a little while to get all through the body and overwhelm your immune system and co-opt your cells and your microcellular processes and metabolism, et cetera, but it's going to kill you.
what do you tell people that how best to prepare for this?
I know this seems like a distant thing, but it's not. Don't let them drive you into ethno-nationalist hatred and genocide, first off, because that's what they want, to hide and metastasize and adapt. And then we lose our humanity, and then they blame us for the next 100 years, 200 years, right? So don't allow this to go at hard ethno-nationalist. Remember that we are members and beneficiaries and keepers of the English civilization, and that there's 3 base principles of our civilization: individual sovereignty, private property, and the balance of power. It's not about ethnicity or race. And know that this is a fight that we have to take on and that we can. And that strangely enough, for the first time in our entire history, quite by accident or the act of God, I don't know, or the gods, the old gods, I don't know. But we actually have the men that can do it, who fought the GWAT, this very kind of fight in other countries all over the world, 120 some odd countries. We know this enemy. We know how to fight this enemy. We know exactly how ruthless they are. We've watched it. We fought this. So we're in this strange place, or this very unique historical conflux, to where the big fights are being taken care of. The skills, knowledge, and expertise and manpower and the readiness and willingness to take this fight on. Hell, the military wouldn't even have to arm us or provide us ammunition. We've got it all. All they need to do is provide us the legal coverage. We'll take this fight on. Literally, I'm not joking. I mean, other than some intelligence, movement signals intelligence and other things, this wouldn't even require the government to give us weapons and ammunition. We already got all of that. Wouldn't have to train us on how to move and communicate and deal with this type of enemy, and how to deal with insurgency, and how to deal with counterinsurgency and counterintelligence and intelligence. We already know all that. We've been doing it for 20 years, 25 years. They just need to give us the legal protections and the legal coverage, and they can do that through sheriffs and judges and certain types of warrants. So all the legal infrastructure is there. Just deputize some guys. So just deputize the right GWAT boys. Give them the right left and right boundaries, right? The legal protections. We'd get through this in about 3 years. And I mean definitively through it.
Define GWAT for people that don't know.
The global war on terror. We've been hunting down and rooting out in sophisticated ways these guys for, these types of people and forces for 25 years. So if there was ever going to be a time when the United States was going to take on, it's taking on the mob state and all the higher level things. It was going to take on the street, the street thugs and the capos. Now's the time. You got the manpower. They're trained. They're prepared. They're ready. They're coordinated and organized at the community level. They already live out there in those communities. They're already self-armed, and so, you know what I mean? It's just like you will never have another condition in American history to be able to take on this type of an all-out, everywhere, always fight. And we're self-sufficient. We've already got our farms. You know what I mean? We've been this whole preparing for collapse, preparing for the Russians, preparing for the Chinese, the Iranians, the terrorists, whatever else fuck, we've been preparing for. Doesn't matter. We're prepared. So some smart attorneys, smarter than I am, I'm not an attorney, but some smart attorneys and sheriffs and governors and guys in the PMC space, but really you don't really use the PMCs to do this. But some smart people who understand the laws, understand the regulatory environments, understand how sheriffs can deputize, can understand the warrant system, the legal warrant system. Hell, we don't even really need government intelligence. We can do it ourselves. I know guys doing, buddies of mine and myself, sometimes we do open source intelligence work that's way better than the government. Way better. But some people really smart at the law should be trying to figure out, okay, let's deputize 50,000, 100,000, a million GWAT guys. There's 3 or 4 million of us. And then there's others who served in other capacities in other ways, going back to frickin' Vietnam.
Where can people find you?
Twitter is probably best. I've been doing more on Substack. My Substack's actually ianburlingame.substack.com. not the shouldering giants that I said last time with Steve. And then, I'm on Substack, I'm releasing some articles. You'll find them on Twitter as well. And then I'm doing the novel as Rome Burns serialized there. And, then there's the books on Amazon. But
yeah, Substack's been, I've been using it more and more.
I saw that.
It's a good little app.
Yeah. It's taken me a little while to figure out some of the interface stuff, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Me too. You can put full videos on there, and there's a huge audience, untapped audience to get information out to that aren't on Twitter. And somebody described it. It's more the scholar route, because you can do the long format, where Twitter or X is that short attention span.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole audience of people on, or not even a whole. There's a lot of authors and contributors that are on Substack that are barely on X.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing. It's like Reddit for smart people.
I don't use Reddit. Do you use Reddit?
No.
Oh.
No. Reddit is, I don't know. I've seen it a couple times. I see things that come up on it. It's just like, it's like Reddit is like academics for retards. That's what it's like.
Yeah, I always enjoy our conversations, and I know it won't be that long before we chat again. So hopefully the person that trolled me, I don't want to say troll, but that said, make it 2.5 hours. Hopefully the hour and 50 minutes will provide them enough conversation until our next one.
Tide them over so they don't stalk you.
People are so funny. Make it 2.5, just turn it into 3, 4, 5 parts. You know what? I've done those. I've done those where I've chopped them up into 2 parts. I'll never do that again. I just keep it all one cohesive conversation now.
To that person, I was thinking about commenting last night when they said that, but very much to what you said before we came on, and you said it before, everything's changing so fast that a 3-hour conversation might be too much anyways. But also because things are changing so fast, it's better to jump in every week or every couple weeks or whatever it makes sense, because what you're doing on your side is you're collating all of this, right? You're collating all of this and then getting it out there. And so for you and Tommy and Ben and Will and some of the others, when something comes to you about having a conversation, that's fitting into a much larger flow of conversation that you're having. And that's not something you can do in a 2-hour, 3-hour thing. That's when it comes to you, and you sense that it's a necessary conversation or personality to engage with.
Plus, too, because of the carousels going so quickly, it's, like even this conversation with you and I'm literally looking at my phone right now, not being rude. I'm like, God, make sure I didn't miss a headline before you and I get done, because if something breaking, here, first batch of Epstein files released. Well, we're still recording, so I just pulled this up really quick just to see do you care about this or no?
Am I on there? Let's just check.
Yeah. There's you, there's the Epstein files have released.
There's Tom Luongo, there's all your guests are on there. What the hell's up with that?
There's the Epstein files this is on Zero Hedge, have been released to a select group of journalists and influencers, so we don't quite know what's in them yet. No. According to New York Post, however, it's a nothing burger, but stay tuned as we'll drop whatever is good, if anything.
I'm sure it's nothing.
Spans more than 100 pages.
It's again, as I said, even if it's all 100% valid, you can't trust it at this point. And you just can't.
So that, or anything else? So I missed any other major headlines here really quick? Yesterday with Pete and I recorded, and then this morning you find out about Gene Hackman, and it's like, oh. And Zelensky will be at the White House tomorrow.
Hopefully in chains. That motherfucker's murdered 1 million at least of his own people.
All right, so we're all...
Have you did you ever see the show Taxi, the TV show? Or are you too young for that?
I remember some of the reruns, but I couldn't verbatim quote to you like some other shows. But I remember it. Andy Kaufman. So shock comedian.
Zelensky is the single greatest shock comedian of all history.
We put him there, though, didn't we?
It's all a big joke. Million plus dead Ukrainian men. Macron said 1.8 million dead men the other day. It's about 120,000 Russians dead, 4 to 5 times that many on both sides severely wounded. Biggest joke in history.
You think it's close to being ended?
They might drag it out. You know what Europe's trying to do right now, the UK and the Europeans in particular, because the Europeans are in control of the UK, as we said earlier on in this conversation. They're trying to send their own men over there to get slaughtered so that they're not home to do a revolution. That's an old pattern.
Sending troops there so that the war doesn't come to them.
They want to send their young men, particularly their young European men, to go die in a hopeless war, get slaughtered in a hopeless war, so those men are not at home to bring about revolutions at home. That's what this whole send peacekeepers, UK is going to send troops. That's what it is. They're terrified, rightfully so, that they're about to be revolutioned at home by their own people, their own native organic people. And they are right to be afraid for that. I don't think it's going to happen here in the US now because the princes have stepped in, the healthy princes, and they're doing the right thing. We've got a different kind of fight here that we have to take on. I suspect this is part of the reason that they don't want to send us overseas to fight anymore, is because they know a fight's coming here at home, and it's not with who we thought it was going to be, the government, although there'll be some factions involved in that, but it's with the frickin' criminals. It's with the cartels. It's with the off the books military of the intelligence community, known as the cartels, the terrorists, et cetera, that they've all been, predictive programming us to, threatening us and predictive programming us with.
And no town is going to be immune from this fight. So my friends that are in Northeast Ohio that are in their little bubble and they think that nothing bad can happen in the utopia.
Deepest red state of Idaho, and they're already here. They're in my kids' school. They're in the charter schools. They're not even going to school, but they're showing up at the kids' parties.
Yeah, I look forward to our next conversation.
All right, my friend. You take care.
Mic drop.